Under the burning glow of distant nebulae, two alien princesses, Zara and Lyra, stood helpless beside their crashed spacecraft. Their surroundings were desolate, a barren landscape of red rocks and eerie silence. The metallic frame of their ship lay twisted and broken, sparking in defiance against the planet's harsh elements. Zara, with her piercing silver eyes, examined the ship's damage. Her sister, Lyra, paced nearby, her luminous blue skin faintly shimmering in the fading sunlight. The sisters had journeyed far, crossing galaxies in search of a haven from their war-torn homeworld. Yet here they were, stranded on an unknown, primitive planet with no backup and no sign of rescue. "This world, it's a wasteland," Lyra muttered, casting a worried glance over the horizon. They were alone, vulnerable, and cut off from all that was familiar. Zara knelt beside a damaged control panel, attempting to salvage any remaining power. But the ship's circuits were fried, and hope seemed to slip further away with each passing second. Just as the last ember of hope flickered in their eyes, a figure appeared through the dust, a human, moving steadily through the rocky terrain, his outline blurred by the planet's gritty winds. To the alien princesses, he seemed almost unreal, a mirage born from their desperation. As he came closer, they could make out his rugged appearance, a tall, broad-shouldered man wrapped in a weather-worn jacket, his face shadowed by the brim of a dusty hat. Despite the harsh environment, he walked with a calmness that suggested he was no stranger to survival. "Looks like you two could use a hand," the man said, tipping his hat slightly. His voice was calm, steady, and carried a strange warmth that caught the princesses off guard. "Who are you?" Zara asked, her silver eyes widening with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Name's Jack," he replied, crouching down beside the broken ship. He studied the wreck with a practiced eye, as if he'd seen machines like this every day. "Lucky for you, I'm good with broken things." Lyra exchanged a doubtful glance with Zara, whispering in their alien tongue, "Can he really help us?" This human, Zara, ever the pragmatist, gestured for her sister to wait. Something about this stranger intrigued her. There was a quiet strength in his gaze, an unwavering confidence that seemed to radiate despite the odds stacked against him. Without waiting for an answer, Jack pulled a toolkit from his bag and began examining the ship's circuitry. His movements were precise, each adjustment made with a focus that suggested years of experience. To Zara and Lyra's surprise, he seemed unfazed by the alien technology, adapting quickly to the unfamiliar setup. "How do you know what you're doing?" Lyra asked, her voice a mix of amazement and skepticism. Jack simply shrugged. "Doesn't matter where you're from. A broken engine is a broken engine. You just have to know where to start." And with that, Jack set to work, an unlikely ally in an unknown land. Little did they know, this meeting would be the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test their courage, redefine trust, and reveal the boundless potential of humanity. Jack worked in silence, his hands moving with a practiced ease as he inspected the ship's damaged control systems. Zara and Lyra watched, their skepticism gradually replaced by a budding sense of admiration. The man's confidence and skill were unlike anything they'd encountered in their interstellar journeys. Lyra leaned over to Zara, her voice hushed. "It's strange, isn't it? We've traveled across galaxies, but we've never met a human quite like him." Zara nodded, her silver eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "He doesn't seem afraid, not even a little." Jack, sensing their stares, glanced up with a faint smile. "You two are a long way from home, aren't you?" he asked, his voice calm and grounded, as if chatting with old friends. "We are," Zara replied, trying to mask her curiosity. "We're not accustomed to humans who know their way around alien technology." Jack chuckled, the sound echoing in the quiet expanse around them. "Let's just say I've had my share of broken things. Spaceships, engines, gadgets. Doesn't matter where they're from. Once you know the basics, the rest is just trial and error." He continued to fiddle with the ship's circuitry, occasionally glancing at Zara and Lyra as if to ensure they weren't about to vanish into thin air. Meanwhile, the princesses couldn't help but marvel at his ingenuity. There was something raw and refreshing about his approach. No formal training, no sophisticated gadgets, just pure, unadulterated instinct. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack sat back with a sigh. "The main engine's still fried," he announced, rubbing his hands on his dusty jacket. "But I've managed to get some auxiliary power going. At the very least, you should have basic communications." Zara's eyes widened. "You mean, we can send a distress signal?" Jack nodded. "It'll be weak, but if you're lucky, someone out there might pick it up." Hope flickered anew in their hearts. Zara quickly moved to the control panel, her fingers deftly navigating through the unfamiliar settings to send out a signal. But as she tried to initiate the message, a loud burst of static filled the air, cutting through the silence like a blade. Lyra covered her ears, wincing. "What's happening?" Jack's expression hardened as he adjusted a dial. "The system's picking up interference, probably from a storm rolling in." He glanced up at the ominous clouds gathering on the horizon, their dark shadows creeping closer with each passing second. Zara and Lyra exchanged worried glances. A storm on this barren planet could mean disaster. Strong winds, lightning, possibly even dust storms. If their communication systems failed now, their chance of survival would drop drastically. "We need to find shelter," Jack said, his tone commanding. "If that storm hits, this wreck isn't going to protect us." Reluctantly, Zara and Lyra nodded, their trust in the human growing by the minute. They followed Jack as he led them away from the ship, his movements quick and assured. Despite the unfamiliar terrain, Jack seemed to navigate it with ease, as if he had been here before. The princesses, though exhausted, pushed themselves to keep up, their survival instincts kicking in. Finally, they'd reached a small cave nestled between towering rocks. Jack motioned for them to enter first, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. Once inside, he took a seat near the entrance, keeping watch as the storm began to close in. The winds howled outside, and dust swirled in the fading light. The storm was relentless, battering the landscape with an intensity that seemed almost unnatural. Yet within the cave, the three sat in an uneasy calm, forced into a rare moment of silence. After a while, Lyra spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you help us?" Jack glanced at her, his gaze steady. "I'm not one to leave people stranded, no matter where they're from." Zora looked at him, her suspicion replaced by genuine curiosity. "But we're not even human. Aren't you afraid?" Jack shrugged, his face softening. "I've seen a lot of things in this universe. Fear doesn't do much good. You two need help, and I can provide it. Simple as that." The princesses exchanged a look, a newfound respect growing within them. In all their travels, they had met countless beings, some more advanced than humans, others far more primitive. But this Earthman, with his unassuming presence and boundless resilience, was unlike anyone they had ever encountered. As the storm raged on, they found themselves strangely comforted by his presence, realizing that perhaps in this vast universe, there were connections that went beyond species and stars. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of their journey together. As dawn broke, casting pale light across the alien landscape, the storm had finally subsided. The cave's rocky shelter had kept them safe through the night, but now it was time to return to the ship. Jack, Zara, and Lyra stepped out, the cool morning air a sharp contrast to the fiery landscape they'd faced before. They made their way back to the ship, which lay half buried in dust from the storm. Jack rolled up his sleeves, his mind already calculating what needed to be done. The princesses watched him, their own skills tested as they prepared to assist. "So, how bad is it?" Zara asked, her silver eyes scanning the damage with a worried frown. Jack knelt beside the ship's open control panel, tapping on a few buttons. The storm took its toll, But the bigger issue is this. He pointed to a cluster of fried circuits and wiring that looked beyond repair. These components are gone, and I'm guessing you don't have replacements just lying around. Lyra's shoulders slumped. No, they were custom-made back home. We'd need advanced technology to replace them. Jack's gaze remained fixed on the damaged parts, his mind working rapidly. He took a deep breath. All right, if we don't have replacements, we improvise. Zara raised an eyebrow. Improvise? With alien technology? He flashed her a confident smile. Like I said, broken things are my specialty. For the next few hours, Jack guided the princesses in a makeshift repair operation. They scavenged the ship for any usable components, and Jack got to work fashioning new circuits, connecting wires in ways that seemed entirely unconventional to the sisters. At one point, he even removed a panel from the ship's interior, repurposing it to restore partial power. "Are you sure this will work?" Lyra asked, her skepticism returning as she watched him connect unfamiliar wires and circuitry. "I don't know," Jack replied candidly, "but it's the best shot we've got." Zara and Lyra exchanged a nervous glance, but Zara's practical nature urged her to trust him. She handed him a small energy cell from the ship's emergency power supply, which Jack carefully wired into the engine control system. Finally, he stood back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Moment of truth," he said, gesturing toward the controls. "Try it now." Zara stepped forward, her fingers hovering over the activation panel. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sputter and a hum, the ship's lights flickered to life. The control panel glowed softly, and a low vibration ran through the metal floor beneath their feet. Lyra gasped, her face lighting up with hope. "It's working." Jack's lips curved into a satisfied grin, but he held up a hand to temper their excitement. "It's a temporary fix. The power levels are unstable. We'll need to keep the system running long enough to make a full repair or find proper parts." Just as relief began to settle in, a sharp beep interrupted the moment. Zara turned to the control panel, her expression hardening as she analyzed the incoming data. "We're picking up a signal," she said, her voice low and tense. Lyra's face fell. "Is it help?" Zara shook her head, her fingers racing over the controls. "No, it's a tracking signal. We've been found." Jack's face darkened. "Found by who?" Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Our pursuers. They tracked us here." The revelation sent a chill through the cave. The pursuers were relentless forces from their home galaxy, notorious for hunting down fugitives and ensuring that no one escaped their grip. Zara and Lyra had risked everything to flee, and now it seemed that the danger had followed them even to this barren planet. "We have to leave, now," Jack said, his voice firm. He moved to the controls, but Zara stopped him, her hand on his arm. "If we try to take off in this condition, the ship will fail. We'd be exposed, defenseless." Jack's mind raced as he considered their options. They were low on resources, short on time, and now facing a threat that seemed insurmountable. He took a deep breath, his determination hardening. "Then we fight," he said, his voice calm yet filled with resolve. The princesses stared at him in shock. "Fight? Against them?" Jack nodded, his gaze unwavering. "If they're coming for you, they'll have to get through me first." Zara's heart skipped a beat. She had seen bravery across the stars, but there was something extraordinary about this human's fearlessness. Despite the overwhelming odds, he was willing to stand by their side, even if it meant putting himself in harm's way. "You're willing to risk your life for us?" Lyra asked, her voice soft, almost disbelieving. Jack's eyes held an unyielding resolve. Nobody deserves to be hunted down. Not here, not anywhere. Zara took a steadying breath. She was beginning to understand what made humans so resilient, so relentless. With a newfound respect, she nodded. "Then let's prepare. Together." As the three of them worked side by side, The ship's systems gradually came back to life. Outside, the dust from the storm had settled, and the planet lay silent once more. Yet, they knew that silence wouldn't last long. The enemies were drawing closer, and soon, they would have to face them head-on. But Jack was ready, and for the first time, Zara and Lyra felt the flicker of hope reignite in their hearts. This human, with his unbreakable spirit, had given them a reason to fight back, and together, they would face whatever came next. The atmosphere in the cave was thick with tension as Jack, Zara, and Lyra gathered their meager supplies, mentally preparing for the confrontation that awaited them. Outside, the landscape was eerily still, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. "How many are we expecting?" Jack asked, his tone calm but steely, as he adjusted a makeshift weapon crafted from spare parts. Zora glanced at the scanner on the ship's console, her face grim. "2 ships. They're fast, heavily armored, and they won't hesitate to take us by force." Jack nodded, unfazed. "All right. We need to outsmart them." Lyra's eyes sparkled with anxiety. "Jack, they're not like you. These pursuers are relentless. They won't back down." Jack's gaze was steady. "Neither will I." Zara and Lyra exchanged a look, their fears slowly dissolving in the face of Jack's unwavering resolve. They'd met warriors, conquerors, and countless beings who wielded power. But this Earthman's courage was unlike anything they'd ever seen. A quiet, resilient force that didn't rely on weapons or technology, but stemmed from something deeper. "If they're tracking us," Zara said, "then they'll assume we're hiding. They won't expect us to fight back." She looked at Jack, a spark of determination lighting in her silver eyes. "We can use that to our advantage." "Exactly," Jack replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "If we're going to survive this, we need to make them think twice about coming after us." Together, they set about fortifying the area around the ship. Jack showed them how to set up a series of traps using the ship's spare components and the rocky terrain. Lyra, who had always excelled in tactical studies, quickly picked up on his methods, impressed by his ingenuity and adaptability. Zara, though apprehensive, put her trust in him, her respect for the human growing with each passing moment. As they worked, the scanner emitted a low beep, signaling that the enemy ships were drawing closer. The 3 of them took cover among the rocks, their makeshift defenses in place, and waited in tense silence. In the distance, a faint roar grew louder, reverberating across the barren landscape. Soon, 2 sleek, menacing ships appeared on the horizon, their dark hulls gleaming under the alien sun. They hovered above the ground, scanning the area with bright, penetrating lights. Jack motioned for Zara and Lyra to stay low. "Let them come in close," he whispered. "We need them to underestimate us." The ships descended, and as expected, the pursuers disembarked, scanning the surroundings for any sign of their quarry. They wore dark, armored suits and moved with the precision of trained hunters. Zara and Lyra tensed, recognizing them as elite soldiers from their home planet's military. One of the soldiers barked commands in their native tongue, and the others spread out, sweeping the area with advanced detection devices. They moved closer to the traps, oblivious to the subtle danger lying in wait. Just as one of the soldiers stepped onto a concealed trigger, there was a sharp crack, followed by a flash of light. The trap Jack had set was simple but effective. A high-voltage surge that sent the soldier sprawling backward, his suit temporarily disabled. In the ensuing chaos, Jack sprang into action, darting out from behind the rocks. With quick, calculated movements, he neutralized another soldier, using his makeshift weapon to disable their equipment. Zara and Lyra watched in awe as he fought, his every move precise and efficient. But the soldiers quickly regained their footing, and soon the air was filled with the whine of energy weapons as the remaining pursuers closed in on Jack. "We have to help him," Lyra whispered, her heart pounding. Zara nodded, her silver eyes blazing with newfound courage. She and Lyra emerged from their cover, joining Jack in the fray. Though they lacked his raw strength, their agility and knowledge of alien combat tactics allowed them to hold their own. The three fought side by side, each trusting the other without question. Jack was a force to be reckoned with, his every move honed by years of survival in harsh environments. Zara and Lyra, fueled by desperation and a fierce will to live, used their unique abilities to create openings, disorienting the soldiers long enough for Jack to strike. After a grueling battle, the last soldier fell, his suit sparking and smoking. The silence that followed was almost surreal, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing as Jack, Zara, and Lyra caught their breath. Jack wiped sweat from his brow, his gaze sweeping over the fallen soldiers. "They'll send more when these don't report back," he said grimly. Zara nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. "We need to get off this planet. But the ship, it's still barely functional." Jack's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "We don't need to outrun them. We just need to make it to a safe distance. I have an idea, but it's risky." Lyra looked at him, her face a mix of hope and trepidation. "At this point, we'll try anything." Jack led them back to the ship, explaining his plan as they walked. They would use the remaining power to initiate a short-range warp jump, just far enough to throw off any tracking signals. It was a dangerous move. If the calculations were off by even a fraction, they could end up stranded in the void. "I'll handle the navigation," Jack assured them, his confidence unwavering. "I've done this before, just never with a ship like yours." Zara and Lyra exchanged a look, their trust in him now absolute. They had faced death together, fought side by side, and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they knew they could rely on this human. As they prepared the ship for the warp jump, Zara placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You saved us today. We would never have survived without you." Jack looked at her, his face softening. Nobody should have to face a fight like that alone. With everything ready, they strapped in and braced themselves. Jack initiated the sequence, his fingers moving deftly over the controls. The ship hummed with energy as it prepared to warp, and in that moment, they felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The engines roared, and with a blinding flash, the ship lurched forward, breaking through the atmosphere and into the vast unknown. For the first time in what felt like ages, they were free. As the stars stretched around them, Zara and Lyra allowed themselves to hope. This journey was far from over, but with Jack by their side, they felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The jump had been successful. They had escaped their pursuers, at least for now. In the quiet aftermath, the ship drifted through the vastness of space, surrounded by the cold glow of distant stars. Jack, Zara, and Lyra finally allowed themselves a moment of rest, the tension of the past few hours fading into a profound silence. Lyra leaned back in her seat, staring out the viewport at the endless void. "I still can't believe we're safe. We wouldn't be here without you, Jack." Jack gave a modest shrug, just doing what needed to be done. But Zara wasn't ready to let his humility slide. She studied him with an intensity that made him shift in his seat. "Jack, we've met beings across galaxies, beings with strength and power beyond measure. But you have something they don't. You risk your life for us without question. Why?" Jack looked at her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Where I come from, we're taught to look out for each other. Doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. If someone needs help, you help. Simple as that." Lyra's gaze softened, a sense of awe in her expression. "Back on our world, survival is everything. Everyone looks out for themselves. Trust is rare." Zara nodded, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. "Maybe that's why we were drawn to explore, to see if there were others who valued more than just survival." She looked back at Jack, her silver eyes reflective. "You've shown us that there's more to life than we realized." Jack shifted, a hint of discomfort in his expression. He wasn't used to praise, especially not from alien royalty. "I'm just a wanderer, really," he said with a chuckle. But maybe I've seen enough to know that we're all trying to survive in this big, strange universe. The three sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, the hum of the ship's engine a comforting rhythm. In the stillness, the bond between them grew, forged in the fire of survival and mutual respect. Zara and Lyra had seen countless worlds, but this human strength and kindness had left a mark on them that no advanced technology or powerful weapon could. After a while, Lyra broke the silence, her voice contemplative. "Jack, if you could go anywhere, see anything, what would you do?" Jack paused, gazing out at the stars. "I've always wanted to see a world that wasn't scared by conflict. Somewhere peaceful, untouched." Zara tilted her head, intrigued. "A world without conflict. That's rare, even in the reaches of the universe." Jack shrugged. "Maybe it's a fool's dream. But I think we all want a place where we can just be ourselves. No wars, no running, just living." Zara and Lyra exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Perhaps in their quest to escape their war-torn world, they had been searching for the very same thing. Their reverie was interrupted by a sudden beep from the control panel. Zara leaned forward, examining the readings. Her face fell as she deciphered the data. "What is it?" Jack asked, immediately alert. "The warp damaged our fuel reserves," Zara replied, her voice heavy with concern. "We don't have enough power for another jump." Lyra's face grew tense. "Then we're stranded." Jack considered their options, his gaze steady. "Not necessarily. If we can find a nearby planet or station, we might be able to scavenge enough fuel to get us going again." Zara scanned the map, her fingers flying over the controls. "There's a small, uncharted planet within reach. It's barren, but it might have the resources we need." Jack nodded, his mind already assessing the risks. "Let's set course. We'll have to be careful. Uncharted planets often hold surprises, and not all of them are friendly." The princesses nodded in agreement, their trust in Jack unshaken. As they altered their course, they each braced for whatever lay ahead, a quiet determination settling over them. They had come this far, and they would face whatever challenges arose together. Hours passed as they approached the planet, its dusty surface coming into view. Jack guided the ship down with practiced precision, landing on a rocky expanse covered in strange, iridescent minerals. The atmosphere was thin but breathable, and they suited up for the exploration, each one of them aware of the risks but driven by necessity. Stepping onto the planet's surface, Jack took in their surroundings. The ground was covered in clusters of crystal-like formations that shimmered in the dim light, casting a haunting glow over the desolate landscape. Zara and Lyra followed him, their expressions a mix of fascination and wariness. "We'll split up," Jack suggested, his voice steady. "Look for anything that resembles fuel or energy sources. Be cautious and stay within sight." The three of them began searching the area, each moving carefully across the unfamiliar terrain. As Jack scanned the rocks and formations, he felt a strange pull, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. Something about this place felt off. Just as he was about to call out to the princesses, he heard a faint hum from beneath his feet. Crouching down, he placed a hand on the ground, feeling the subtle vibration. "Zara, Lyra," he called, his tone urgent. "I think there's something under us." The princesses joined him, their expressions puzzled. "What do you mean?" Zara asked, crouching beside him. Jack pointed to a crack in the ground, where a faint glow was emanating. "There's some kind of power source down there. It might be exactly what we need." Lyra's eyes widened. "But if it's underground, how will we access it?" Jack's face was thoughtful, his mind already formulating a plan. "If we can find a way in, there's a chance we can extract what we need. But we have to be careful. Whatever's down there might not welcome visitors." As they continued their search, the hum grew louder, and a faint path became visible, leading toward a cave entrance half hidden by rocks. The three exchanged wary glances before moving forward, each step bringing them closer to the unknown. In the dim glow of the cave, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. The journey had been full of danger, yet he felt an unexplainable pull, as if this place held answers beyond the fuel they needed. And as they stepped deeper into the cave, Zara and Lyra felt it too. A sense of purpose, a reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries lay in the uncharted. The dim cave stretched before them, its walls lined with strange, glowing crystals that cast an eerie light over the rugged terrain. Jack, Zara, and Lyra moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The hum they'd felt earlier grew louder as they ventured deeper, a pulsing rhythm that seemed to resonate with the energy around them. Jack kept his eyes sharp, instinctively scanning for any sign of danger. Zara and Lyra followed close behind, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The sisters had encountered strange worlds before, but there was something different about this place, a feeling that it held secrets older than the stars. "Do you feel that?" Lyra whispered, her eyes wide as she looked at the shimmering walls. Jack nodded, his expression serious. "This energy, it's powerful, and it doesn't seem natural." They continued forward, their path lit by the gentle glow of the crystals. Soon, the narrow tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. In the center of the room stood a massive, ancient machine, its metal surface covered in intricate symbols that glowed faintly. The machine seemed alive, each symbol pulsing with energy. Zara's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this place?" Jack approached the machine cautiously, examining the symbols. "It looks like some kind of generator. This might be the source of the energy we need." Lyra moved closer, her eyes scanning the markings. "These symbols, they're similar to the ancient languages we studied back home." She traced her fingers over one of the symbols, feeling a slight vibration under her touch. Jack glanced at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Think you can decipher it?" Lyra nodded, determination in her eyes. "I'll try." As Lyra worked to interpret the symbols, Jack and Zara scouted the chamber, checking for any signs of danger. The silence was unsettling, and both of them felt an inexplicable sense of being watched. But with each passing moment, their desperation grew. They needed the energy, and this machine might be their only hope. After what felt like hours, Lyra looked up, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "I think I've figured it out. This machine draws energy from the planet's core and stores it in those crystals. If we can activate it, we might be able to siphon enough energy to refuel the ship." Jack smiled, his admiration for her ingenuity clear. "Then let's do it." But just as they moved to activate the machine, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The ground beneath them rumbled, and small rocks fell from the ceiling, clattering around them. The machine seemed to respond, its symbols glowing brighter, as if it were awakening. "What's happening?" Zara asked, her voice tense. Lyra's face paled. "I think the machine has a defense mechanism. It's detecting us as intruders." Jack's jaw tightened. "We don't have much time. We need that energy, but we'll have to be quick." With swift, practiced movements, Jack guided Lyra to the machine's controls, helping her navigate the ancient mechanisms. Together, they began the delicate process of extracting the energy, their focus unwavering despite the rumbling ground and the intensifying hum. Zara kept watch, her senses alert for any sign of danger. As the machine's energy surged, the crystals along the walls started to pulse, filling the chamber with a dazzling light. But their success was short-lived. As they siphoned the energy, the machine emitted a loud, angry whir, and the rumbling intensified. "We need to hurry," Jack shouted over the noise. "This place is about to collapse." With one final adjustment, Lyra managed to secure enough energy for the ship. She nodded to Jack, her face determined. "Got it. Let's get out of here." The three of them turned and sprinted back toward the cave entrance, the ground shaking violently beneath their feet. The walls began to crack, and chunks of rock tumbled around them, blocking their path. Jack led the way, clearing debris and guiding the princesses through the narrow passages as the cave threatened to bury them alive. Just as they neared the exit, a large boulder crashed down, blocking their path. Zara and Lyra looked at Jack, fear in their eyes. Jack assessed the obstacle quickly, his mind racing. "Stay back," he said, positioning himself against the boulder. With every ounce of strength, he pushed, his muscles straining as he tried to clear the path. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed hopeless. But then, with a final surge of effort, the boulder shifted, creating just enough space for them to squeeze through. "Go!" Jack yelled, gesturing for them to move ahead. Zara and Lyra scrambled through the opening, and Jack followed, barely making it out before the tunnel collapsed behind them. They tumbled onto the planet's surface, gasping for breath, covered in dust and sweat. They lay there in the open, staring up at the sky, relief flooding over them as they realized they had survived. After a moment, Jack sat up, a grin breaking across his face despite their close call. "Well," he said, brushing the dust off his jacket, "that was a bit close." Zara laughed, a sound of pure relief. "A bit? You just saved our lives, again." Lyra nodded, her expression one of deep gratitude. "Thank you, Jack. You've risked everything for us." Jack shrugged, his smile softening. "Like I said, nobody should face this kind of fight alone." With their spirits lifted and their mission complete, they made their way back to the ship, using the energy they had managed to extract. Jack and the princesses fueled the ship's engines, their excitement mounting as the control panel lit up with power. "It worked," Zara murmured, a sense of wonder in her voice. Jack took his seat beside them, his gaze steady. "We're not out of the woods yet, but we've got what we need to keep going." As the ship ascended, leaving the dusty planet behind, the three of them felt a renewed sense of hope. Their journey was far from over, but together they had overcome impossible odds. And with each passing moment, their bond grew stronger, a bond forged in the fires of survival and trust, and one that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. The ship hurtled through space, the stars streaking past as Zara, Lyra, and Jack caught their breath from the harrowing escape. With the new energy reserves, they had enough power to get them to a safe distance. But the journey they had shared had left them with more than just fuel. It had given them new perspectives, forged bonds, and uncovered parts of themselves they hadn't known existed. Zara, at the helm, glanced over at Jack, who was studying the control panel with his usual calm, focused expression. She hesitated, then spoke softly, her voice filled with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Jack, what will you do after this?" she asked, her silver eyes flickering with something unspoken. Jack met her gaze, a hint of sadness in his own. "My place is here, on Earth," he replied, his voice gentle. "I'm a wanderer, but there are things on my homeworld I need to see through." Lyra's face fell, though she tried to mask it with a faint smile. "You could come with us," she offered, her tone hopeful. "There are countless galaxies left to explore. We could show you worlds beyond anything you've ever imagined." Jack chuckled, the warmth in his eyes softening the bittersweet moment. "I appreciate it, Lyra. But some things, some journeys, are meant to be taken alone. And besides, Earth has its own mysteries. I'd like to think that I'm just getting started on my own adventure." Zara and Lyra nodded, understanding in their eyes. They had always known that their time with him would be brief, but in those fleeting moments, he had changed them in ways they could never have anticipated. "You know," Zara said, her voice low, "we've met so many beings, some of them powerful beyond belief. But none have had your resilience, your kindness. You've reminded us that strength isn't always about power. It's about courage and loyalty, and the willingness to stand up for others." Jack smiled, a warmth filling his heart. "And you've shown me that even in the far reaches of the galaxy, we're not so different. We all have fears, dreams, and people we care about." The ship's console emitted a soft beep, signaling that they had reached a safe zone. They had traveled far enough to evade any remaining pursuers. This was the end of their shared journey. The princesses and Jack moved to the ship's docking bay, standing together in silence as they prepared for their farewell. Lyra's face held a faint sadness, while Zora's gaze was filled with gratitude and respect. "Thank you, Jack," Zora said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "For everything. You gave us hope when we thought we had none." Lyra stepped forward, a soft smile on her face. "And you've reminded us of something we had forgotten. That there is still kindness, even in the darkest places." Jack looked at them both, his voice warm and sincere. "You two have given me a glimpse of worlds I never imagined. And you've shown me that courage and friendship know no bounds, not species, not galaxies." As they stood there, sharing their final moments, a sense of peace settled over them. Their lives had crossed in a way that few would understand, and though they were parting, they would carry the memories of this journey forever. Jack gave them a final nod, stepping back toward the airlock. The doors began to close, and he raised a hand in farewell. "Take care out there. The universe is a vast place, but remember, you're not alone." With a soft hiss, the airlock sealed, and Jack was gone, leaving Zora and Lyra to continue their journey. They stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where he had stood, the weight of his words lingering in the air. Finally, Zora turned to the controls, her expression resolute. "Let's continue, Lyra. There's still so much to see." Lyra nodded, her heart full yet aching. "Yes, and maybe one day we'll meet someone else with Jack's spirit." The ship's engines roared to life, and the two sisters set a new course, their hearts carrying the lessons and memories they had gained from their unlikely human friend. As they vanished into the stars, they knew that Jack's kindness, resilience, and courage would guide them wherever their path led. And back on Earth, Jack looked up at the night sky, a faint smile playing on his lips as he remembered the two extraordinary princesses he had helped. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but for the first time in his life, he felt that he was truly a part of it, a wanderer among the stars, forever connected to the cosmos.